but I'm not going to guarantee that until the end of the video. Okay, so this should be the last part. Well, I'll guarantee that at the end of the video, so let's start. They sat there in silence for a couple seconds. Nico casted a small glance over Will as he took a bite, then turned his attention back to the horizon with an unreadable expression. He cleared his throat. So why are you here all by yourself? A smile tugged at Will's lips. Nico had been by himself the entire time before he was at camp. Yet, he was asking Will why he was alone. He didn't let go of grudges. He let go of grudges, sorry about that, and didn't let his past experience dictate his attitude. He admired that in the son of Hades. Will wished it was that easy to move on as Nico made it look. Will swallowed. He shrugged off haphazardly and took another bite of his banana. Nico pursed his lips and glanced away. I'm not going to make you talk if you don't want to. I understand. I don't pressure you. Sorry about that, I'm eating. Nico crossed his legs and wouldn't take his eyes off the horizon. And only sounds were the whining of Pegasi and the crashing waves against the shore. Nico's a man of many secrets, yet his eyes darkened when he spoke those words. Despite knowing Nico for so long, he rarely talked about himself. Now it didn't feel like the time to press, but it's something Will would bring up later. Nico surrendered. He clasped his knees, started to stand. Before he could get up to leave, Will blurted out, "Wait, Nico, have you ever felt like... Have you ever..." Their eyes locked. "Ever felt like a monster?" Nico sat back down. He turned towards Will. Nico wore an entirely different expression. Guarded, steely, and hollow. His eye bags seemed darker than ever. His cheeks appeared sunken. His pupils were suspiciously slits. "What do you think?" "Because I have," Will interrupted. Nico's expression softened. A voice came out hoarse, as a spectacle whisper. "What are you talking about?" For once in his life, Will seemed to be at a loss for words. It was frustrating how Nico made his tongue feel so tongue-tied. Nico shuffled a bit closer. "This better not be about the patients you couldn't save. We've been through this, Will. You did everything you could help." "It's not about the lost patients," Will interrupted. His outburst of anger had come despately as quickly. The space, as long as it is as quickly as it's come. His voice fell to a weak whisper. "I know I wasn't strong enough to heal them, but it's not about... There's not what this is about." "Look at me," Nico commanded. His voice was firm, asserted, a voice he probably hadn't used since he was at the Roman camp. Will obeyed, not entirely reluctantly. Nico's lower lip was quivering. His eyes were stone. "You are not a monster." "You don't know that," Will managed to say. "You don't know me either, Solace." Nico practically laughed. "So maybe it's time we change that." "What? You want to go first for share and tell?" Will hissed. "I don't know what you mean, but you better start making sense, Solace," Nico said. "I'm worried about you." Will bit his lower lip. He swallowed and took a shallow breath to avoid his voice cracking. His hands were shaking. He couldn't back out of this one. I was the one who caused my mother's death." Will smacked himself mentally. He never thought before he spoke. That probably wasn't the best way to start a conversation. Nico didn't break Will's gaze. Will should have known the topic of death wouldn't make him nervous. "I was too." "No, Nico, I killed her. I didn't mean to. He kept silent, his gaze unblinkingly at Will. "I didn't mean to do it," Will whispered desperately. I was in control of my power. Your power? I don't understand. Nico blinked. He didn't flinch. He didn't run away. He sat right where he was before, examining Will closely, rolling a hand through his hair, fingers gripping at his blonde hair. Nico, he murmured. You know how my siblings always mock us for how often we're around each other or how well we get along, even though our parents are completely different elements? This seemed to be news to Nico, them getting along or Will's siblings mocking them. Either way, Nico raised an eyebrow, and that guarded expression slowly crept onto Nico's face. Okay? Well, you and I aren't really as different as they think. Nico was toying with his coloring now. Did that somehow connect it with our mothers being dead? Well, no, that's not what I was. Will took a steady breath. He realized his hands were trembling. You know my father, Apollo. Got a son in plagues, 30 health and 2,000 defense points. Will nodded. Right. Well, wait. What, you know he's the god of plagues? Of course. He's one of the most powerful gods, arguably the most powerful. Nico spread out his palms. There had to be a reason, other than being responsible for the sunlight. Nico dug through more jacket pockets and pulled out a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and took a bite of it. Will knitted his eyebrows. Well, we don't talk about the plague part much around here. Apollo kids are... Will consciously glanced behind him, speaking about the Apollo kids, all sitting on the Apollo cabin. Wasn't the brightest idea. We made sure no one else was around. Well, they're healers. They're poets. They're archers. They're songwriters. Everything about the typical Apollo powers are renewed here. You heal people, Nico noted. Thanks for pointing that out, Will huffed. I'm not natural, though. I wasn't born with the superior healing abilities everyone else thinks I was. Nico pondered for a moment, then took another bite of his sandwich. That's what made you the best healer at camp. You are not a natural. You don't see healing as a casual ability. You have to work extra hard at it. Nico paused, his eyes flickering back to Will. But we're getting off topic here. Will shook his head. A nervous feeling bubbled in his chest. It's not that he was scared. Nico's aura always gave him a strange comfort. He didn't know how to use the words for it. The words didn't come as easy as to reveal his darkest secret. My fault, sorry. I inherited Apollo's power to cause plagues. That's the truth. Nico fidgeted beside him. That's a big secret. He stayed silent. Nico sat the crust of the PB&J sandwich down next to him, then pulled a cherry-flavored juice box out of his jacket pocket. He ripped the plastic bendy straw and tucked it in the pouch. He took a glance at Will, to say, well? Will's heart was pounding out of his chest. He swallowed nervously and continued. When I was 11, I lost control of it. I didn't know I was a demigod at the time. I casted a plague on my mother with no idea that I was a son of Apollo who could heal her. It was an accident, but it still haunts me. I'd be banned from the infirmary if anyone else found out about my curse. If the others found out, Nico's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. You'd have that many more people to back you up. Will leaned against the Apollo cabin wall. Are you kidding me? No one's going to back me up. A smile tugged at Will's lips. Yeah, that's what I thought, too. Will peered over at Nico, eyebrows furrowed. Forget it. He crushed the drained cherry juice box next to him with a banana peel. The point is, it's not as bad as you think. And now that you faced it, the first step is to conquering your fear. Nico had a knowing look in his eyes. He must have experienced fear like this too. But Will couldn't pinpoint what it was. From his body language, Will knew that Nico would vanish if he pressed the topic too hard. Now wasn't the time for Will to be stubborn. And I'm here to back you up, Nico murmured. You really think I'm going to be scared of you now? Will's expression softened. His scowl vanished. Nico pursed his lips and spread his palms. A support from the sign of Hades isn't much, but it's something. No, it's more than I could have ever asked for. They sat down in somewhat embarrassing silence. They listened to the crash of waves. Neither of them two had done serious talking, usually about business, small talk, or combat training. They weren't quite well how to respond to compliments. Nico and Will sat and watched the other campers as they exited the dining pavilion. Campers were still far enough away that they looked like ants. The Will could squash between his thumb and index. They were alone. So what if you inherited some plague powers? Nico finally spoke. His voice hoarse. He had to clear it again. Nico's voice had grown deeper and more powerful. Truly confident still wasn't the best way to describe it, but is on its way towards that. It doesn't change who you are inside. It certainly doesn't make you any lesser of a healer. Nico shoved his sandwich crust into the crumpled juice box and back into the aviator. No English trouble. Will answer to me. You're the only one I plan to tell. Nico hummed. Well, I won't tell anybody, but you should. When you're ready, I mean. You should be surprised at how accepting people are. Will cracked a smile. I don't get you, D'Angelo. Nico shook his head. Plague powers are nothing to be ashamed of, as long as you harness your abilities. It looks like you are the master at healing, the best this camp's ever known. I should even act for it. My mother is gone because of my plague curse. I know how it feels to lose someone for it, but the truth is, the best way to move on is let their souls go, Nico whispered. Will met his eyes nervously. Will didn't know much about Nico's story, but he knew that holding grudges used to be a fatal flaw of his. Ever since he stopped holding them, a smile on his face became much more frequent. Letting your past define who you are now, well, that can be dangerous. The sin of Hades didn't break Will's gaze. You're right, Will said. Nico nodded. He stood up, offered Will a hand. For once, Will didn't push Nico's hand away. He clasped it, and was surprised with how much force Nico pulled him up with. He may be 4 inches shorter and 20 pounds lighter than Will, but he packed a lot of muscle in his 5'8", 100-pound bony frame. They walked off the Apollo cabin deck, and it gets cut off. It just ends with "and" with no period. I'm sorry. For the record, I know how you feel. Nico spoke casually. Will's heart delayed race. You do? My powers aren't exactly cheery. Oh, right. Relief bubbled in Will's chest. But I've never feared it. Nico unleashed his Stygian iron sword, dropped the apple core to the ground, and tapped the sword against the ground twice. The earth began to tremble. The dirt separated. Tiny mouse emerged from the ground, which took the shape of a mouse. Beatrix, the skeleton mouse, sniffed at the apple core, then peered at Nico with his empty eye sockets. It is something we're born with. It is who you are, and the sooner you accept that, the better. You're right. Will and Nico stopped at the talking of the barrier outside the Apollo cabin. You're not alone. Nico, I know how it feels too. Like I said before, you and I aren't much different. Except you're awful at sword-to-sword combat. Nico smirked. Will cracked a smile. They broke into laughter. The sound of Nico's laugh still made Will's heart soar. Soar. S-O-A-R. Listen, Will, Nico said. I know how hard it is to tell your secret, so I'm glad you trusted in me enough. I don't really have a family. I've never had real friends before, so you know. Will spread his palms. The only one I really trust now. Will was surprised by what Nico did next. He hugged him. Nico took a step forward and buried his face in Will's shoulder. Will wrapped his arms around Nico's shoulders, pulling him into a tight hug. They would have stayed for a few seconds stayed that way for maybe a few seconds longer than a typical hug between two friends. Maybe they enjoyed the security of each other. Maybe it was a secret message of a trust-encoded tight embrace. Maybe they were just two lost demigods. There's someone who may be more. Nico and Will pulled back. Well, that was the first true contact they'd ever have. In fact, when Nico or Will